What's up everyone, this is Dariusz Kalbarczyk, co-founder of MG Poland, JS Poland, AngularMaster.dev and nglearn.pl. Welcome back to the Angular Master podcast. Today we've got a special guest straight from Graz, Austria. Trainer, consultant, speaker, web enthusiast, micro frontend architect, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Egger-Zikes. Hi Michael, how are you?
Thanks, I'm fine, Darex. What about you? How was your day?
Perfect. So for those who don't know you yet, please tell us about yourself.
Great, thanks. My name is Michael and I'm part of the Angular Architects Trainers Network. So actually we help customers working on their front ends with Angular and mastering their challenges with their front end development.
Can you start by explaining the concept of standalone components in Angular and the benefits in business application development?
Yes, recently we received quite a bunch of new features, right? So the Angular team delivered a lot of new APIs, starting with Angular 14, and the standalone components also are an API that was introduced with Angular 14. It's a new way of implementing your applications, beginning with the bootstrapping and even touching components, directives, pipes. So the big news on that is we don't need any ng modules anymore, but they still stay compatible. That means it's not urgent that you refactor the whole application code base like you maybe needed to do with AngularJS applications. It's now working compatible. That's the big thing and really nice API.
How has your experience as a software architect influenced the way you approach teaching Angular at the university level?
Besides my consulting and training business, I also teach at the local university in Graz in Austria. And yeah, it's always fun working with students because it's a little different, in my business life. I'm typically working with developers that already know how to develop even enterprise applications, not only hobby projects. And on university level, it's different. It's quite mixed. You have quite experienced young software engineers, but also newcomers that maybe hear about software development for the first time. So it's quite often a challenge to find the right approach on educating all of them. Yeah, but always fun and helping people get into the dev business is always a good thing. Yeah.
What is special about teaching students?
Different questions, of course. Yeah. It makes a difference if you are developing enterprise applications for several years, or if you have a different point of view and maybe also asking uncommon questions, that you maybe would not definitely always find in business context, but they are quite interesting. It's also interesting bridging the gap to, of course, the economic perspective that is also educated on university level, and also the experience that all the students have in their personal life and also in their business life, and connecting that to the teaching at university level.
Can you describe the architectural challenges you typically face in large enterprise-scale Angular projects?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, there are completely different types of Angular applications. The Angular framework allows that, so that's definitely one of the targets of the Angular team as well, to allow different kind of developers to write the Angular project, starting with non-business applications, but of course also with enterprise applications. And also enterprise applications are not always written in the same way. It really depends where you come from. Often Angular projects, enterprise projects, the developers come from a very object-oriented world, developing their backends or their former web applications with .NET, with Java. And of course, that's a different perspective compared to developers that come from a heavily functional-driven world. And so also the object-oriented implementations are not always the same. You have reactive ones, you have less reactive ones, and basically helping people to find their right approach is quite interesting stuff. Yeah, bringing them to a new level, but also suggesting them ways to implement the applications that feel right for them and not for me.
What inspired the transition from traditional monoliths to using moduliths in Angular development?
Yeah, basically that's often a challenge, if you start an Angular project and you simply need to meet your deadlines in your project life and just deliver features. And then, quickly you run into a code base that is not that nicely organized anymore because, the projects differ if they were implemented with non-single page applications, server rendered applications in the past. You need to find the right structure, and Moduliths help us actually to organize our source code in that way that the application can then scale. That's the most important thing because you want to scale your teams, you want to scale your code.
Could you delve into the advantages of using Mono Repo?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, Mono Repos help you to organize your code base. Just the previous question that you asked, writing your monoliths, so having a non-monolithic code base, if you want to change this in a more modular one, then you need to find a proper structure. This starts with subfolders, but also involves libraries. And as soon as you have libraries, it's far easier to manage them in supporting only one version of the Angular framework and the third-party dependencies. And a monorepository approach helps for that. Yeah, it's not the only way to go in the front end. We can also support multiple versions. We maybe can come to that a bit later. But strategic design, one of the methodologies of domain-driven design, helps you to organize your front-end code base. Yeah? Putting all your implementations into subdomains, putting them into different layers of each subdomain. That's important exactly for what I mentioned before, for scaling your applications and scaling your teams. So this should be the first step, and afterwards you can think of whether you want to have the built monolithic application, Micro Frontend, etc.
How do tools like NX and Sheriff help in maintaining architectural integrity within Angular projects?
And basically, if we want to manage a large code base, but also smaller ones already, the JavaScript and TypeScript language does not come automatically with a feature that helps you to define a set of rules who is allowed to access which parts of the Mono repository. So, if we're looking at Google or other big software companies, basically they have several thousand applications in one Mono repository. Yeah? It would be very interesting to work inside such a big Mono repository, to be honest. So the Googlers have quite much experience in that, also the internal tooling. And you always need a strategy then if you manage such a large code base, but also for smaller ones that are maybe realistic for the majority of enterprise projects. You need to have some kind of set of rules who is allowed to access and import parts from which area of that Mono repository, because you want to avoid that each and every project is allowed to access another one. Or even inside the project, you want to avoid that one library that is used there can be accessed by all the domains of one application. And if you want to go a little bit deeper and have even management for subfolders, then not only NX can help you, but in this case, the Sheriff library. The Sheriff library follows the ideas of those so-called module boundaries, so the set of rules on how to define who is allowed to import from whom. This is called module boundaries, and NX allows this on a level of applications and libraries. But if you want to go deeper, you can use the Sheriff library. One of my colleagues, Rainer Hanekamp, implemented that, and it's really helpful because it allows you to even manage those imports on the level of subfolders. And it's really quite nice on how you configure that. You can even use functions for that to make right linear configurations. So Rainer did an amazing job on that and still continues the amazing work. That's really helpful. Clear recommendation. Look at that library, the Sheriff library.
In your view, what are the main considerations when implementing Micro Frontend architecture, particularly using module federation?
Module federation is one of the architectural options that we have. We can, it's not directly supported by the Angular team, but the Angular team also helps us in especially Manfred Steyer, who is doing the amazing work of implementing the bridge between Module Federation and Angular CLI, and also introduced the concept called native federation that uses browser standards to do the federation story. What does federation mean? We can actually use different build processes and different points of in time to deploy our applications. That means if you manage your applications in a mono repository, but it would also work with multiple repositories, you can really slice your whole application build into tinier parts and then decide during runtime whether I want to load the one or the other version. And would even be possible to start an application shell in the morning and integrate a Micro Frontend that was published afterwards during noon or afternoon into your running application shell and continue working. So it's quite an amazing technology supported by the great ecosystem in Angular. And it's one of the architectural options that you can choose if you already have a modular application. It's even easier, right? And if not, then try to get into that direction, because the more separation you have, the easier it is to slice out single micro frontends. Yeah.
You are now listening to the Angular Master Podcast by ANG Poland. Listen, code, repeat, all you need to know to become a super Angular developer. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and drop us a cool comment. And don't miss out our second show, the JavaScript Master Podcast, where you find tons of fantastic JavaScript topics. What are the key performance improvements Angular developers can expect from leveraging esbuild?
Yeah, esbuild is a quite modern build tool that is, let's call it that way, the whole JavaScript ecosystem is now looking in different alternatives on building the applications faster with better build times in general, but also better incremental build times. And esbuild is one of the very promising tools. And the Angular team invested quite some time, some major releases to do exactly what they always do in the recent versions. They try to make a nice upgrade story for us as well. So they try to introduce things not only in kind of a beta stage so that the user is the beta tester, but they prepare it behind the background as an opt-in option. And then if it's mature enough, they switch it to a default, but still continue to support the previous builder. It was always still Webpack, so Webpack is still supported. But if you generate a new application with the Angular CLI version 17, then it's per default uses esbuild, and esbuild is written in Go, so it's more performant also running your builds. So we are using a different language to build than JavaScript, but there's nothing wrong about that. If it's more performant, that's quite nice for us. So you can expect quicker build times. You can expect that in typical setups, your application still works. So the migration is just switching out some Angular JSON configurations. And yeah, we get into the modern future of build tools and also can expect quicker build times. That's quite a nice thing. And good story, to come back to your previous question, federation concepts still work with esbuild. If you switch from module federation to native federation, configuration part is almost the same, and you can dive into a new future of modern web development, fast modern web development.
Angular Signal seems to be a significant advancement. Can you explain its key use cases and how it integrates into modern Angular architectures?
Yeah, Angular Signals are the, let's call it the elephant in the room, also in our podcast maybe today. So the Angular Signals APIs, it's nothing that the Angular team invented, to be fair. Ryan Caniato, so the founder of the Solid.js library, introduced that concept, at least in the front-end world, so with early versions of Solid.js already in 2016. And the Angular team was looking for an integrated reactive API into the Angular framework, and Signals, they evaluated the market, which solutions could be good candidates for that, and the Signals turned out to be the best one for them, fulfilling most of the set targets. And basically the idea is, on one hand, also to make the Angular framework easier for newcomers. React Vue, they all do not come with the mandatory dependency on RxJS. And although RxJS is very powerful, And I would expect that we see AngularJS still in future, and also, of course, that currently used Angular applications in future. Basically, it's quite complex to get into RxJS. And for the Angular team, of course, although onboarding new Angular developers is an important story. So Signals fulfill a specific part of the reactive usage of RxJS in a bit better way. And that part is actually the edge between your application state and the DOM, the document object model, so the HTML, where you want to bind your data on. That means at the moment of time that we want to use JavaScript to map the values into the running HTML document, that's the critical path if it comes to performance. So the Angular framework already had quite performance change detection strategy baked in, but it required to check the whole component tree. And with Signals, for the first time, the Angular framework really knows not only that a change might be necessary and that it needs to check the whole application, but it now knows exactly where the change needs to be bound. So this is allows us for the future a quite more fine-grained way of putting the state into our applications. So you may ask, what will win if my application is already performant enough? I can answer you, maybe only a few milliseconds in that case, but you could run into future implementations where you easily could run into performance issues if you think of a data grid with a lot of rows, with a lot of subcomponents, with quite much going on in the DOM. Exactly in those use cases, chances are quite high that could have been an issue with the current strategy, but could be performance per default, by default, with Angular Signals. So that's one of the benefits, not only that. Yeah.
How does the NGRX Signal Store enhance state management, and what are its benefits over traditional methods?
State management is actually something that you can start with quite easily, back then without Signals, with maybe RxJS and behavior subjects to manage your state. Even without RxJS, just writing a service, putting in a property and assigning your state there. With the latter one, you are not reactive, so you cannot notify source code that is interested in that state. So a reactive approach would likely be better. Then, of course, you can use Angular Signals to manage your state. But both Signals and also behavior subjects have some limitations if it comes to more than just managing a string, a number, or a simple object. If it comes to connected state, more complex state, entities that have some relationships, and most of the time they have relationships in our business applications, then it's a good idea to focus on a state management solution. And it could be the full Redux pattern like with the NGRX store that already supports Signal APIs since Angular 16. So you can fully work with Signals instead of observables with the full NGRX store package as well. But there's also a lean alternative, the NGRX Signal Store, available. It's currently in developer preview, and it likely will stay in developer preview also with Angular and NGRX 18. But it's quite promising. It's a lean library that follows quite, and they're really trending those lean state management solutions also outside the Angular ecosystem. So either for small applications, for medium-sized applications, for local state management inside your component or inside your generic component, the Signal Store is a perfect fit. But you could also use it like the component store until now, also for some global state management slices that are maybe quite isolated. So a good example is, for example, the whole auth service part. If you want to write an auth logic and it manages your token with your user state and so on, this could be a perfect fit that can quite nicely be isolated from the rest of the global state. If it really comes to more global state, of course, the Redux pattern has still some advantages. And there are, good news, already Redux community solutions available, actually already two that you can use for Redux and the Signal Store. They are not part of the NGRX namespace of the official one, but nevertheless quite promising. And of course, there's always the global store still supported, and you don't need to be busy, and there's no reason at the moment to refactor all your global state management with the Egger-Zikes store. It is still supported and still a recommended solution at the moment for Redux state management, but quite a nice lean alternative with the Signal store available.
Could you share some insights on developing custom feature within the Signal store to handle complex scenarios?
Yeah, definitely one of the nice APIs where the Signal store really shines is using generic patterns. So it's sometimes a little bit challenging to write the TypeScript APIs for that, to be honest. But on the other hand, it really uses the composition of functions. That means it's perfectly well tree-shakeable because there's no mandatory dependencies on certain features that the Signal store offers. So even the integrated ones that you very likely will use, like with state and with computed and with methods, also they are quite tree-shakeable. So the total amount of source code that you need for in any case is quite low. So it really shines also in the performance benchmarks if it comes to tree shaking. Custom features are one solution that, like the Egger-Zikes team did for us, we can also develop additional features for the Egger-Zikes store. And for example, my colleague Manfred Steyer and also Rainer Hanekamp and also me, we already implemented, also the rest of the community, of course, implemented some nice features. One example is a data service feature where you could pass in your data access service with a type compliant filter, and actually it creates automatically for you all the CRUD methods and updating the states on an entity level for a specific entity that you define. So it's quite nice. It allows us really to tackle reoccurring implementations if it comes to state management on a generic level. And basically, I mentioned sometimes the TypeScript API is really hard to get it correctly, but there are quite a lot of community solutions as custom features already available. You can use them. You can look into the source code. They're all open source and get some inspirations also on how to do the TypeScript API right there. So I guess this is really one thing that will be a big pusher for the Signal store, the whole extendability. You could use this for the global store as well, but here the API is really nicely integrated with full type support, and that's quite nice. Yeah? Gives you also some guidance on how to do that integrated.
What strategies would you recommend for planning and deploying enterprise-scale Angular applications?
The patterns that I would really recommend is looking at your source code and also looking at your team on what's their way of implementing Angular applications. You know, in an enterprise, in the company, basically with an enterprise development, there are different kinds of developers. Some are coming from the backend side, some are fully front-end experts, and you need to find the proper mix on how to implement your applications. It doesn't make sense if you implement your applications very reactive and half of the developers that are working with that on that source code are not even understanding what the code actually is doing, that the most or best skills enterprise developer actually wrote. So find your correct mix, find strategies on, if not the whole front-end team is on the same level on how to educate them, use concept of external trainers, use concepts of internal trainer concepts maybe, and experts inside your company that can help lowering the gap between the knowledge of your colleagues. So then you can also look into more advanced patterns, and also put the code base on a new level. More reactive one, for example.
As a consultant, what common mistakes do you see teams making when they adopt new Angular technologies?
I would say it's often really not focusing on what they need to accomplish their story. Maybe even sometimes, if it comes now to the new APIs, to take too much steps in one go. So first of all, my clear recommendation: focus on what's important for your business, because often we don't have all the budgets to refactor our code base. But actually we teach also our customers on how to do the migration story correctly. So how can you get most out of the available time that you have for migrations, for example? Which parts of the new APIs what is most important, where do you get most out of it, where can you use Angular code generators and schematics to do some things automatically, like turning your ng-ifs and ng-fors into the new control flow syntax with the add symbol in front. All that stuff. Some refactorings are quite easily even automated. Some are not that important at the moment to refactor your whole code base. I would say it would be a mistake to focus on the wrong things. And at the moment, it's maybe a little bit challenging to even know on what to focus first. That's basically how we help our customers to take the right decisions. On taking the correct pace that matches their project budget as well.
Given your vast experience, what future trends do you predict in Angular development?
Yeah, I guess the Angular team is now at the moment focusing not only on that, but also heavily on the server-side rendering part. What does this mean at all? Basically, other frameworks like React, for example, had a long story, also running your front-end application on the server, delivering the initial view basically pre-rendered on the server or even statically pre-rendered deployed to the server. And that means quicker startup performance, better search engine optimization. And to be honest, Angular had a server-side rendering solution also since quite some major releases, community supported. The Angular team recently really put a clear focus on, first of all, putting that community solution into the framework core, basically. On the other hand, also continuing the story to make the server-side rendering story more automated, so that you do not need to configure everything on your own. In the past, for example, we had that issue, the transition between the server-side rendering and then when the client jumps inside your browser, they often had such a flickering. And all of that is now automated, and the story continues into a future solution that we can even deliver a whole Angular application in future statically, and only those parts become interactive then if you use them. So if they scroll into the viewport, if the user interacts with a specific form, then maybe afterwards the result view is preloaded in the background to be rendered later as soon as possible. So quite interesting stuff going on here. In the server-side rendering area, it's also called hydration, and some also call it resumability, so resume applications from the server-rendered parts to the client-rendered ones, not only for the whole application, but for tiny parts of your HTML document. Yeah.
What advice would you give to budding Angular developers and architects to enhance their skills and understanding of modern web architectures?
Basically, I would say there's a lot of material available publicly. So this is also something where the Google team really tries to push the community and all the Angular experts to deliver content for free. So that's quite a good solution. If we compare this to other technical areas, that's not common in each and every part of the ecosystem, but there's likely much more material available than you can read in your life, in your entire life. So basically, sometimes often it's even challenging to find the right material. But definitely use also the social networks, connect to Angular experts, connect to the Angular Master podcast and all the services, that also great services that you provide, Derek, with the ng Poland conference and so on, that are always resources to connect to Angular experts, to connect to the Angular team, but also what's very important to the rest of the Angular community, using the always sessions at conferences like ng Poland to talk to other engineers, how they use Angular to tackle their issues. Maybe sometimes they have even better answers than the Angular team or we as an Angular experts, because they challenge the very same problems like you in your enterprise, and some buddies from the Angular community can often have the right advice for you as well. So that's basically a good way to enhance your skills. And then if you're on a specific level or on any level, actually, try to share your knowledge with others. Yeah, there's nothing wrong in doing mistakes or sometimes giving wrong answers. That's fully fine. Try to really use the power of the community and try to put yourself and everyone else onto a new level. I guess we have a quite good spirit here in the Angular community, helping each other. Yeah, that's quite a good thing.
What kind of person is Michael? How do you see yourself?
Almost 40 years old in summer, and had some injuries recently, so I need to take care of my body, I guess, with the high age of 40 years now. Almost. My family, father has 2 daughters and a wife, live here in Austria in Graz, in the second biggest city. Grew up in the capital in Vienna, so always nice to return there as well. They really enjoy technical stuff, not only on business side, but of course also my personal projects. Love to hack actually.
Graz is an amazing city. I always really enjoy coming there.
Thanks a lot. And maybe I can spoil something, right? You will visit Graz in June again, right, Darren?
Yeah.
Because we have a meetup then. So if someone of the community is close by, at the end of June, you can find the appointment on meetup.com. We will have a brilliant meetup with excellent speakers like Tarek and Emma and Mathieu and so on, and Manfred. That will be great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The next question is, do you have some hints for us regarding self-organization?
Yeah, basically I can benefit of them as well always. So I'm always interested in that, and investing time since my, childhood, because one of my uncles motivated me in that direction already young age. Self-organization, putting yourself in the right mindset, motivational things, and so on. That's quite important, and it's quite important to stay also mentally healthy and to find the right mix of working hard maybe, but also taking your time off when it's necessary, because we all know it's sometimes challenging to really stay healthy physically, mentally, and that's an important thing to always sometimes also take a step back actually, and not always try to optimize your own, but also try to have the time that you actually need. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite hobbies?
I love to go running. At the moment, as I mentioned before, I had some injuries. I hope they will continue soon. My running career, my hobby running career at least. So back then, from 2012 to 2019, I did some half marathons. So not the most brilliant time, but always a good target that you have in front of your eyes to do a little bit more training if you know you will join an event some weeks later. Try to hopefully continue on that as soon as possible again.
A favorite book? It can be technical or non-technical.
Yeah, maybe as we were talking about quite a bunch of technical stuff. What I can definitely recommend, there's also a great blog post by Victor Sefkin. It's about messaging, enterprise messaging patterns. One of the classical books about software engineering. Victor Sefkin once wrote a very interesting blog post about NGRX in combination with messaging patterns. He referenced that book, and maybe we can put it afterwards into the comments of this podcast. It's from 2017, actually, the blog post, but still very helpful if you want to manage your application with Redux. That would be one of my favorites for in the technical area. Of course, also domain-driven design and so on. And the non-technical ones, if it comes to the authors, I really love the books of Paulo Coelho, Alchemist and so on. Always, I guess it's quite connects to the self-organizing motivational things. So I love the spirit of this author.
Michael, thank you so much for today's podcast. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks a lot for the very kind words, Tarek. I really enjoyed it here. I hope the community also likes our podcast, and I would love to come back for future episodes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.